Live to Caleb Maupin from the International Action Centre to get reaction as we wait for official confirmation of the deal as we believe it. Caleb, good to see you there. Thank you very much for joining us at short notice to discuss this breaking news. How big a breakthrough is this then when the confirmation will hopefully finally come in a few minutes?
Well, this is definitely a huge step forward, because if things are as they announced, as you just announced, that they will be able to maintain some of their peaceful nuclear energy program, this seems to finally be a recognition of what Iran has always had the right to do under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is the right to pursue peaceful nuclear energy, which they have been doing and which has always been monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. This entire crisis is purely manufactured by the United States and Israel, because all Iran has ever done is tried to pursue peaceful nuclear energy. It seems that according to what's been announced and what's going out, we'll have to see what comes out. I mean, we don't know all the facts yet. But according to that, if Iran is making a concession and giving up a certain amount of its program, but it's still maintaining its right to practice peaceful nuclear energy, and that's the issue here. It's important to keep in mind this entire crisis has really been manufactured by the United States and Israel, because Iran has fully complied with all of the obligations required of it in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And the fact that there's been negotiations and that some kind of deal has been reached, this is a step in the right direction.
OK, let's just remind our viewers of the information that we've got. We are still awaiting, of course, official confirmation at that media briefing, which will hopefully take place in a few minutes' time. We're hearing that Iran will have 2/3 of its enrichment capacity suspended. That will be monitored for 10 years. The centrifuges, they'll go from 19,000 to around 6,000. And also that the enriched uranium will be diluted or sent abroad. Is this a deal? We're still awaiting, by the way, for news on how the sanctions will affect Tehran. But is this a deal on the surface? As I say, we're still awaiting official confirmation. But on the surface, does this look like a deal that is suitable to both sides?
Well, it wouldn't have been announced if both sides hadn't made an agreement. It seems like, the fact that there seems to be coming out reports that both sides have agreed to something. I don't think there would have been any announcement if both sides didn't look as if they were willing to agree on this.
Well, we are seeing live pictures. I'm not sure if you can see them, Caleb. We've got live pictures from Lausanne in Switzerland, where the foreign ministers are meeting. We are expecting a press briefing between the EU's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, and Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. But at the moment, all parties involved, you can see US Secretary of State John Kerry there, with Britain's Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond as well. The main players, I suppose, in this process are just posing for a photograph at the moment. It's all smiles and handshakes. But those are the pictures that we're seeing from Lausanne at the moment. Why do you think negotiations took so long? The deadline was a couple of days ago, Caleb, but it's taken an extra 48 hours or so.
Well, let's be clear that ever since these negotiations began, there has been a concerted effort by, the right wing in the United States, as well as the Israeli government and its allies of supporters, backed by the oil corporations and the military contractors, to do everything they can to prevent a deal from being reached and to stop the negotiations.
Caleb, I've got to interrupt you because we can now go live to the media briefing, the press conference between the EU's foreign policy chief and Iran's foreign minister.
I'm going now to read the joint statement that we have agreed on with Foreign Minister Zarif and all the others that have been negotiating so hard in these days. We, the European Union High Representative and the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, together with the foreign ministers of the E3+3, China, France, Germany, the Russia Federation, the United Kingdom, and the United States, met from 26 March to 2nd April 2015 in Switzerland. As agreed in November 2013, we gather here to find solutions towards reaching a comprehensive resolution that will ensure the exclusively peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program and the comprehensive lifting of all sanctions. Today, we have taken a decisive step. We have reached solutions on key parameters of a joint comprehensive plan of action. The political determination, the goodwill, and the hard work of all parties made it possible. And let us thank all delegations for their tireless dedication. This is a crucial decision, laying the agreed basis for the final text of the joint comprehensive plan of action. We can now restart drafting the text and annexes of the joint comprehensive plan of action, guided by the solutions developed in these days. As Iran pursues a peaceful nuclear program, Iran's enrichment capacity, enrichment level, and stockpile will be limited for specific durations, and there will be no other enrichment facility than Natanz. Iran's research and development on centrifuges will be carried out on a scope and schedule that has been mutually agreed. Fordow will be converted from an enrichment site into a nuclear, physics, and technology center. International collaboration will be encouraged in agreed areas of research. There will not be any fissile material at Fordow. An international joint venture will assist Iran in redesigning and rebuilding a modernized heavy water research reactor in Arak that will not produce weapons-grade plutonium. There will be no reprocessing, and the spent fuel will be exported. A set of measures have been agreed to monitor the provisions of the JCPOA, including implementation of the modified Code 3.1 and provisional application of the additional protocol. The International Atomic Energy Agency will be permitted the use of modern technologies and will have enhanced access through agreed procedures, including to clarify past and present issues. Iran will take part in international cooperation in the field of civilian nuclear energy, which can include supply of power and research reactors. Another important area of cooperation will be in the field of nuclear safety and security. The European Union will terminate the implementation of all nuclear-related economic and financial sanctions, and the United States will cease the application of all nuclear-related secondary economic and financial sanctions, simultaneously with the IAEA verified implementation by Iran of its key nuclear commitments. A new UN Security Council resolution will endorse the JCPOA, terminate all previous nuclear-related resolutions, and incorporate certain restrictive measures for a mutually agreed period of time. We will now work to write the text of a joint comprehensive plan of action, including its technical details, in the coming weeks and months at the political and experts level. We are committed to complete our efforts by June 30th. We would like to thank the Swiss government for its generous support in hosting these negotiations. And let me personally, and on behalf of everybody, also thank you all, journalists and media from around the world, for having followed our work and somehow also having worked with us over this difficult but intense and positive week. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening to all of you. Let me also join Mrs. Mogherini in thanking both the Swiss government and the distinguished members of the press and media for their actually trying to work with us over the last several weeks and trying to help us in getting the world to know what was going on. As our tradition has been, I will read the same statement that Mrs. Mogherini just read out to you in English in Farsi. It'll be the same statement. You don't need interpretation. ما وزیر امور خارجه جمهوری اسلامی ایران و نماینده عالی
So there you have it then. That's the EU's foreign policy chief, Federico Mogherini, and Iran's foreign minister, Javad Zarif, making a joint statement in Lausanne in Switzerland, where all sides, the P5+1 and Iran, have agreed a framework, then reached an agreement, and drafting on that agreement will now start. And they intend, they say, they've got the political will to have the full document drafted and completed by June the 30th. Now, I believe Caleb Maupin was listening in to that statement, or at least I hope Caleb Maupin was listening in to that statement and can react to it now. Was there anything in there that surprised you? Did any shocks come out of that, or was that pretty much as we expected?
Well, while I was listening to that statement, I was kind of overwhelmed because it's been 36 years since Iran had its revolution in 1979, overthrew a brutal U.S.-backed dictator. And ever since that time, you know, Wall Street, Tel Aviv, and other forces in the world have been really pushing their hardest to try and overturn the Iranian Revolution, try to put Iran back under the control of Western bankers and corporations. And today we see a real step forward because it seems that Iran's right to peacefully develop and to peacefully develop using peaceful nuclear energy has been recognized to some extent, and that these criminal sanctions, which have really just kind of locked Iran out of the world economy and hindered their efforts to develop, that they're going to be set back and reduced. I mean, this is a step forward. The fact that these negotiations took place, the fact that some deal has been reached, and there's talk of ending these criminal sanctions. This is a step forward, and this is a great day, and I'm sure people will be celebrating all around the world, not just in Iran, but all over the world. People will be celebrating this as a step forward. Now, we'll have to see how far it goes, and we see that even though this deal has been reached, there's still massive opposition within the United States, massive opposition in Israel, massive opposition in Saudi Arabia to this, and whether the deal will hold and continue, that'll have to be seen. But as of now, this is a victory. This is a victory for the people around the world that want peace and cooperation between countries and don't want war.
Can those who are opposed to such a deal, you've mentioned the Republicans in the Congress in America, obviously Benjamin Netanyahu and many within Israel as well, can they still scupper this at this stage, or is the momentum now in favour of this deal being signed, sealed and delivered?
I really strongly doubt that there will be an end to their efforts to hinder relations between the United States and Iran. I really doubt that they're going to simply give up and surrender. I think that they will continue their efforts. They will continue to try and thwart this and try to press for war. I mean, the real issue here is that, the Likud party in Israel, the Republican Party in the United States, as well as their Democratic Party allies, this is about oil in a lot of ways. I mean, this is about the fact that Iran has a state-owned oil company, which is in competition with the Wall Street and London-based oil corporations, and that Iran exporting oil on the international market gets in the way of their profits. And if you look around the world, all the countries that the U.S. seems to have a problem with, whether it be Russia, Venezuela, you name it, they all seem to have some kind of role in the international oil or natural gas markets. Economics is really driving the hostility to Iran, and that's a real factor. And this is really about money. Iran has not attacked anyone. Iran has not attacked any of its neighbors. But right now,
Caleb, I want to ask you then, why are those hardline voices, why are they losing their power now? Why is their momentum against what they want at this time?
Because the entire world is standing against them. I mean, you can go back after the collapse of the Soviet Union. There was a feeling in the United States that they could get their way all over the world, and that there was no one who could stand against them. But the tables have turned. I mean, there is a rising movement around the world of countries that are breaking free and standing up for their independence. They have different religions, different ideologies, different perspectives, but all of them are basically asserting their right to develop independently without Wall Street bankers ordering them around, and their right to set up and develop their countries independent of the will will, of Washington, D.C., Wall Street, and London. And this is a rising thing, whether it's China, Russia, Venezuela, Iran, Syria. These countries are asserting their right to develop independently and to reject Western neoliberal capitalism. And this is a rising force that the United States and the powers that have really kind of pushed extreme free market neoliberalism on the world, they're facing a level of opposition they really haven't faced since the end of the Cold War.
Okay, Caleb Maupin, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your reaction to this breaking news here on RT International. Much appreciated.